All right, boot camp. This is your community manager, Jana. It is the last day of July for 2024. Can you even believe it? I don't know where the time has gone. Well, maybe I do, but it's the last day in July, and hopefully you are having a wonderful summer, whether you are schooling year round or taking a break. I always love the end of a month and then the beginning of the next. So it excites me to know that we are finishing off something and it's complete. And then the next day is something new. And I hope that your summer has been fun. We have been packing up and getting ready to move cross country. So that's been how we have spent our summer when we haven't been working, my husband or I. Our kids are just living their best life, doing all the fun things, seeing their friends. We're getting ready to send one off to college. One is staying in our hometown, and the other one is coming with us. She's our youngest. She's the one who's still using BookShark. So got a lot of changes going on, and I just like the end of the month, the beginning of the next month, the next thing. I made a mistake at the end of last week's live when I talked about this week's session. This week's session is actually scheduling your homeschool day. So last session, we talked about planning out your year, printing out the calendar, marking off those important dates. So you want to make sure that you don't want to do school days, that you make sure that you get all of your school days in, but also that you take those breaks, that you build in those flex days, you have vacation, you really use that fifth day during the week to do those educational things that you just build time for. All of the museums and the zoos and the nature activities, the co-ops, the getting together with friends, all of those things are important. And they're also important for you. And we'll be talking about that in a later session, things that you are going to need to do, or I'll encourage you to do in order to have a solid foundation. And as you are the one holding up the homeschool, keeping it all together, whether you're mom, dad, grandma, grandpa, aunt, uncle, friend, teacher, whomever you are, we're going to talk about some of those important things in a later session. But today's session is about scheduling your homeschool day. So you want to think about how are you going to structure your day? What is it going to look like? I think maybe that's one of the biggest apprehensions for people when they think about homeschool is what am I going to do all day long with my kids? And I will tell you, your days most days will go fast. Now, there are some days that will just seem to drag on, and that's just part of life, right? We have good days and we have bad days. I think setting up honest expectations is really important. Knowing that you're going to have these amazing days where everybody is just in a good mood and it all just fits, and people are learning and they're sharing what they're learning and they're going deeper, and the birds are chirping and just kind of feels like a Disney movie. Okay. Those days do come, they do happen. But realistically, there are days that really just drag on and you wish they would end. And sometimes you have to end your day earlier than you anticipated for a number of reasons, but that's totally normal. Think back to the times when I had certain teachers so I did private, public, and homeschool. All of the ran the whole gamut for education as a child, lived in several different states while doing it. And so I feel like I have a pretty good perspective of what education was, at least back then. It's been a while. But I will tell you, there were plenty of times when we watched movies all day long, when we, went outside and read a book instead of doing a lesson. So I just want to make sure that you know that you have permission starting off in this journey. You get to make it yours. You get to make it look like however you want. So let's talk about what it could look like, structuring your day. What is it that you need? Do you need to be done by a certain time? By the time a spouse comes home or a partner? Do you need to have a certain day off? Is there things, some people actually homeschool over the weekend because that's how their schedule works. And there is nothing wrong with that. But what do you need? And what does your child need? Do you have young ones that just bound out of bed as soon as the sun cracks through the skyline and they are ready to go, and you're barely getting up to make some coffee or tea? Do you have a little bit later risers? Are you a later riser? You just need to think about your own needs and be realistic about what your day as you homeschool is going to look like. If you are not a morning person, I would highly recommend you don't start at early in the morning. You don't have to start early in the morning. This is your journey. That's the beauty of it. If you're not an early riser, your children are not early risers, then you start when you start. So it's going to look different for everybody because everybody's going to have different needs, different scheduling. all of those things. So I just want you to be realistic about that. Another great way to be realistic about your day is to go to bookshark.com, go to the level that you're doing, whether you're doing an all subject package or you're doing an individual subject. I want you to look at the recommended time. So if it's an all subject package, it'll be the recommended time for you to get through all four core subjects: history, language arts, science, and math. If you're just doing science with BookShark, go ahead and click on that and see what the recommended time is. It will help you have a better understanding of what and how to schedule your day. So, are you going to start at 8 a.m.? Are you going to start at 12 p.m.? I'd love to know if you guys are early risers or late risers. So I'm kind of a mix. I definitely rise with the sun. And if you are watching the BootCamp alum, you know I've talked about my sunrise alarm, because when the sun rises later in the day, I struggle to get up early, to get up at the same time, because the sun isn't waking me up anymore. So that sunrise alarm has been very helpful in the winter dark months when it just feels impossible to get out of bed at 6 o'clock in the morning. But I will tell you, in the summer, birds start chirping around here about 4:45. And then my eyes are starting to open, and it's such a pleasant, natural way to wake up. And then the winter comes and it's just not that way. So that's just a little insight into how I struggle. But so you could be an early riser at one season and a late riser later on. Same with your kids. I like to stay up really late if I'm really into something. If I'm reading a book, there are times I have not put myself to bed until after midnight because I just want to read one more page, one more page. And I know I'm going to pay for it when I need to wake up at 6 o'clock the next morning. But to me, those moments are worth it. So it may change. You may not know. If you're new to homeschool and you've been rising because you had certain schedules and things you had to get to, you may not know. Maybe just take a couple weeks and see. You kind of see in the summer when your kids don't have to run out the door, how they kind of naturally wake up and what time they're getting up. I'd say my almost 15-year-old wakes up about 10 typically. And whatever. If we don't have to be somewhere, that's totally fine. It works. So want you to think about that. What are your needs and what are your children's needs? So that's what's really going to drive the boat and how we start to structure our homeschool day. The other thing I want to talk about is 2010 rule. And this is definitely can be adapted, but I just want to talk about this idea of 20 minutes of work and a 10-minute break. So that may feel as though nothing is going to get done. But I will warn you that if you try to push through and make things longer, it's going to be a lot harder to get things done anyways. So if you have younger children and you are working through those lower levels, I think it's a good rule of thumb for the 2010. Now, that doesn't mean that they're not going to move in those 20 minutes. It just means that you're going to be intentional for 20 minutes and then you're going to break. And your children may have a natural flow. It may be 15 minutes and a 5-minute break. I mean, you're just going to have to find your rhythm, but a good rule of thumb is the 2010. So in that 10-minute break, that's when you get a snack, you plan accordingly, you use the bathroom, you do some body movement, you do some brain breaks. Actually, science proves that this really helps efficiency and focus if you do a brain break. So maybe it's not just all of a sudden they get their break and they run away from the table, they start playing. It is harder. We all know it's harder to bring kids back once they've walked away. So maybe your 10-minute break or 5-minute break just looks like getting out of the chair or standing up wherever they're at and doing some jumping jacks, doing some fun facts, just switching it up so that they have a break, so that you go back to what you're doing and they're a little bit refreshed. It also doesn't mean that subjects are only going to take about 20 minutes. Really depends on the level, the child, and the parent. It does break it up, but you can do two 2010s to get through a subject if you need. You can do a 2010 of one subject, a 2010 of another subject to keep it very fresh for your student. And you can also ask your kids, get their input. Doesn't mean that they get the final say, but I will tell you, in a household of 3 girls, it's been very helpful for me to get them to buy into the things that I am doing. So you can set a timer. You can ask them what kind of timer they want to set, or what sound do they want to hear when their 20 minutes is up, but then their 10 minutes is up. There's really fun and engaging ways that you can implement the 2010 rule and see how it works for you and your family. So you need to also think about adjusting it for your child's age. Like I said, maybe it's 10-5. Maybe if they're a little bit older, it doesn't always mean that you can adjust it longer, but you can look at the 30 to 15 or 45-15 rule if they definitely are have the ability to focus longer on what they're doing. But make it your own, and nothing is absolute. Maybe you try the 20-10, it didn't work, and you try the 10-5 and see how that works, or you go a little bit further. And it doesn't mean that if your child is really engaged and the timer goes off that you have to stop what you're doing because that's the 20-10 rule. Obviously, you are going to have the freedom to use your discretion and see how it goes. But as a rule, think about 20-10. See how it works for you. Now, it's really good to implement this for yourself as well. And what I mean by that is when you are setting your time to work with your children, you need to also be focused. And I know how easy it is to get distracted. I used to have a job where I worked part time, and everything, my clients contacted me throughout the day on my cell phone, mostly through text. And so I felt justified, like, oh, well, hold on, I have to answer this person. But there are actually studies that are showing that if you yourself block off times, to get all of your text messages out or all of your emails out and then put that aside and focus on what you're doing, you actually are also more efficient. So I want to encourage you that while you are thinking about the 20-10 rule for your student, see how you can apply it to yourself. It will also just really show your children that you're dedicated to what's going on. So I not always great at this, but I like to practice what I preach. So if I'm asking my kids not to have their phones at the dinner table, I'm also not having my phone at the dinner table. And again, can justify it and say, oh, well, I'm waiting for this email to come in, or this person just needs my help with something. But I'm really starting to learn that there are things that can wait. And waiting just a full 20 minutes before you respond to something actually is really helpful in a lot of areas. And so people know that, hey, I'm not going to be able to respond during these days that I am homeschooling my kids right away. Set that expectation out there. Be intentional with it because you need your community to come and surround you as well. Same with your partner or your spouse who maybe is not in the house or is in the house as you're homeschooling. Everybody sit down and come together and decide, like, what are the blocks of time that we're going to be able to interact with each other. And again, nothing is set in stone. And there are things where your kids are just going to want to run away and share when they're really excited about something. But as a rule, be very intentional on how you set your time and how you demonstrate to your kids that your time is important to them too. There are times that I hate to admit that I was homeschooling my girls and they would be talking to me and I would be texting, even if it was for work, setting appointments, getting things done, answering questions. And they would be like, Mom, Mom, Mom. And I was, mm-hmm, mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And then they'd pull a mom trick on me and they say, what did we just say? And I'm like, I don't know. What did you just say? And then I would be like, okay, wait, what did you just say? And they learned that they were just wasting their words because I wasn't paying attention. And so I would have to purposefully put my phone down, make eye contact and say, please tell me what you're trying to say to me. And there are times they wouldn't repeat themselves. I mean, granted, we're talking about stubborn teenagers, but I lost some things because I wasn't being intentional with my time when I was with my children. And now, as a mom who is losing two at once, I can look back and go, oh, I could have done so much better. But we can't regret the things, but you can start with a fresh slate. And I'm encouraging you to think about these things now so that when you get to the place where I'm at, you don't have to feel any of that regret. Thankfully, I have one more in the house that I'm going to try to do better. So, and we're all imperfect. So there is no judgment there at all. But it's just a good reminder. Set the rule for yourself, implement these things so that you are being able to focus on your children and their lesson at the time that they need it. And then when it's break time, then it's time to return all of the text messages or see what's going on. And just really, it's a discipline, I think, for both student and parent, and it will only benefit you and your children's education. So the other thing I want to talk about is this idea of, are your kids the freshest when they wake up? And you are the only one that can answer that. If I had tried to make one of my daughters do math in the morning, she would have it wouldn't have worked. Her mind was not awake yet. She needed more time to really wake up. Where I, on the other hand, and one of my daughters, We wake up ready to go. I don't need coffee. I love coffee, but if I don't get it, I can still keep going with my day. So, what kind of kid do you have? And what kind of parent are you? Are you going to wake up and jump right into your heaviest subject? Or are you going to wait until everybody's kind of done their thing, a little bit more awake, maybe do a read aloud right away instead of trying to do math? It really just depends on your students. So, we could say, do harder in the morning when they're more focused. But if your child or you are not more focused in the morning, don't do harder subjects right away. Maybe save them till after lunch. It's going to work out. You're just going to figure out what works for you and your students the best. So, you could read history texts while you're waking up, move into language arts or math, science, then hands-on history later on in the day for like the fun part. You could do read alouds where they're playing with Legos or coloring. You could do the geography later on in the evening as a review for the day. There's just so many ways. So I'm not here to tell you how to schedule your homeschool day, 8 o'clock start, 9 o'clock math, 10 o'clock language arts. But what I'm saying is definitely take time to schedule out your day, and it's going to change. So again, use pencil. Use pencils that you don't have to worry about if you thought it was going to be one way, if you thought you knew your kid, you thought you knew yourself, and then things change. Use pencil, give it a try. Know that you're always going to be adjusting and give that expectation to your children as well. Hey, we're going to try this. And if it doesn't work, then we'll try a different way. One thing that I really liked and worked well in our home was I allowed my children say on how they wanted their day to go as long as it worked. If the work got done and we finished our day in a reasonable amount of time, that was fine. But I always told them, you can do it your way until it doesn't work, and then it's my way. So that's just a little thing. Okay, so you have your book days. We talked about that last session, 144 book days, week one, day one, W1, D1. Use your instructor guide. Use your instructor's guide to keep record. Times that you did things, of what you did. There's definitely a note section down there. Use it. If you have an idea for a field trip that comes up as you're, going through your history reading, jot it down so that you don't forget, but also don't start Googling it so that you get distracted, right? So jot it down to go back to later and go, oh, remember we talked about this. That's a great idea. But use, record the things that you did. If your child had an aha moment or you had a moment, I think I'm not so great about writing notes like that. So keep your IG handy so that you can use that note section. It gives you confidence. Also, that you can prove that you did do school with your children. Your elective days, you want to think about your vacations, the fun things that you're going to do. Again, zoo, aquarium, battlefield, monuments, all those things that are educational that you get now the time to do with your children because they're home educated. Use your library as a resource. Your library, my library, has amazing backpacks, adventure backpacks that you can pack out, and they each have a theme. And so let's say it's bird watching. You can actually check the backpack out. It will give you a day pass to the state park, binoculars, a bird book, things to look for in my state. So many exciting ways to implement fun educational field trips and, out of the home ideas for education as well. Not everything has to be done inside your home, in your schoolroom or at your kitchen table. Just want to encourage you with that. Check out your library. We also have adventure passes at our library where we can get free admission to a lot of these zoos and aquariums, or buy one, get one free. So many more things that are available to us that maybe you didn't know about. So encourage you to check out your library. All right, I'm almost done, you guys. Virtual Seat, if you haven't checked it out, it's pretty amazing. It will help you in your scheduling. It will help keep you on task, your student on task. They can, if they're independent, they can be more independent and check out their assignments and log in and do them. Kind of frees up some of your time if you have multiple children and you have olders, or maybe it's not even an age. Maybe you just have a child that's a little more independent and responsible. You can have them log in, and then you can work with the other child that needs a little bit more hand holding, all of those things. So you have that available to you as an add-on through your program. Definitely check out our website. It's going to talk about the virtual seat option for BookShark. And then if you haven't heard about it, we have LAMP. It is our language arts mentor program. We have a certified teacher who is grading and then mentoring your student in their writing via written communication through our virtual seat. So there are no lessons. The teacher is not teaching your student, but they're mentoring them. The student is submitting their writing, and the mentor is going to help they score the writing and then give them feedback and help them be a better writer. So that is also available. It's called LAMP, LAMP. All right, guys. Now we're going to talk about staying organized throughout your year. Session 6, your homework. How will you implement the 2010 rule? When do you think you're going to start your day? Is it going to be early morning or is it going to be a little bit later in the afternoon? Schedule out your first week if you have not already started. And then once you get through your week, you'll have a better idea of what your structure is going to look like day by day. And again, it will change depending on the season. So post a picture of your first week. If you want to include your child, again, do it. We'd love to see faces. If not, hold up the piece of paper. We are totally fine with that. We just want to get you guys engaged with each other and seeing how some people are doing it, how it would benefit you. Maybe you can benefit somebody else, but that is what this community is all about. So again, ask your kids what they want to do first and enlist them, and that will help empower them to take ownership over their homeschool as well. All right, you guys, that's it for session 5. I will see you next week. I'll be posting the homework post as well as the Q&A for Monday. Hope you guys have a great weekend. Bye-bye.